On this episode of Locked On Angels, what's on your mind Monday? We had a lot of conversations last week about how the Angels could handle the offseason, and you, our everydayer, shared your opinions and feedback about trading Taylor Ward, potential trade targets and free agents, and your thoughts on the current roster. So we're going to get to all of that. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to John and I, the Super Halo Bros, for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts, thanks to those that have already done so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Happy Monday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Mike and I have been Angel fans our whole lives, and so it's a pleasure and a privilege to be talking Angels baseball Monday through Friday, every single weekday here on Locked On Angels. Until about late December, we'll drop down to about 3 episodes a week, but we'll have some, in-between content as well. But we're here 5 days a week until then we'll ramp back up to 5 days shortly before spring training. I had to laugh because the Frisch curse is very real. But you can't see it, but behind the scenes, we can still see each other, even when an intro graphic is playing. So like when our intro song is playing, Mike is coughing, I'm blowing my nose. Like that's just the Frisch curse. And so at least we hit it behind the scenes though, right, Mike?
Yeah, you just threw us under the bus, John.
You know what? I like being transparent and open and honest.
Hey,
on today's show, it's What's on Your Mind Monday. I was saying, hey, Feedback Friday on a Monday, because we were going to do a Feedback Friday with all of your thoughts and everything, but Mike's idea was better. What's on your mind Monday? The reason we're doing it today is because the news about Jorge Soler pushed this episode from Friday to today. So we're getting to your comments, your thoughts about all of our discussions from the past week, including the possibility of trading Taylor Ward. Mike, would you mind, maybe more often, you could take a day off, and then we'll get some more Angels news this offseason, because of course, when the Angels make a big trade, you're not able to be there. And that was unfortunate, but hopefully I carried the team well that day. But let's get into people's thoughts about the Taylor Ward trade possibility.
Yeah, Sydney Scott, a great everydayer, said, Angels organization wants to live a Ferrari lifestyle on a Honda paycheck, and it shows. As far as Ward goes, I think that unless the trade package offers a good starting pitcher or something equally as valuable, I say we keep him for another year. I know there's always the big quote-unquote if when it comes to Mike Trout on the field, but with the Angels actually being willing to mess around with his placement on the field and at the DH spot, I think Trout in the lineup could ensure Ward puts up the same numbers that he did in late August at the end of last season, although I'm totally biased because Wardy is my favorite. Catchers turned outfielders unite. John, what's your response to Sydney Scott?
Yeah, well, and keep in mind that this is before the Soler trade too. So these were her thoughts before that. So that does add a wrinkle to the conversation. But I did bring this up on Monday. I said it would be interesting to see Ward in a lineup where he isn't the star, the threat. And a lot of the times this past season that he was the threat because he was having a great season up to a certain point. And then, once everybody starts getting hurt and he's the big bat in the lineup, I think that's really where he gets exposed, Mike. In the past, he's had Trout, Rendon, Ohtani, and those guys that hide him really well. And then when he's the veteran in the lineup, that's essentially what we got this year. We had a great start, an ugly summer, and then a strong finish. And you've said this before. If Ward is a piece, if he's a piece of the puzzle surrounded by bigger bats, I think that plays well for him and the Halos. Now, having said all that, with the Soler trade going down, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here with Taylor Ward in the offseason, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Matt Oso 7676 had some skepticism, John. I mentioned last week that a Taylor Ward for maybe an Eric Fetty could be a possibility. He said, I don't see the Angels being able to acquire one individual player that will affect their bottom line much. Even if they trade it for somebody like Fetty, he's just one player. One player isn't going to greatly affect their win-loss total, especially a starter who only pitches every fifth game. They still need at least 2 or 3 more starting pitchers, and not because their starters are bad, but they also need it for depth. When injuries hit, they need more run production, more power, more consistency, more timely hitting. Kind of sounds like Artie, Matt. John, what's your response to Matt Oso?
Yeah, I don't disagree with the sentiment. They definitely need more. And even people who were trying to wrap their heads around the Soler trade over the weekend, look, that can't be the only move, right?
Yeah, right.
If it's Soler and we're done, then this is not a great offseason. And I don't think that it will be the only move because of what Perry Manassian had to say, but we've been burned in the past, right? So I understand skepticism on whether or not they'll be able to get more things done. When you're in a position to trade Ward, like the trade rumors article suggested, it has to be one part of a greater series of moves, trades, signings, that sort of thing. So it's not trade Taylor Ward and everything's going to be great. All of our
right.
going to be solved. It's going to be, he's got value right now for some reason, Mike, and maybe I'm discrediting him too much, but there is a lot of interest in Taylor Ward from other teams, and more power to them. But there's a lot of interest in him right now, and he's got value. He's got 2 more years of relatively cheap arbitration years, and can add something to the outfield for any team. So at this point, it's not so much like a Ward trade is going to solve everything. It's get what you can for him right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, here's another conversation about Fetty and Taylor Ward. Mike's VHS Treasures on YouTube has some skepticism. Cardinals announced that they're likely to cut payroll due to their RSN collapse, and they're looking to move Arenado and Sonny Gray. They have a $12 million club option on the aging Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson. So they'll probably keep Fetty and his $7.5 million salary. I agree with that. Reds, however, are desperate for outfielders and have too many infielders. So how about a deal that centers around Ward for Jonathan India? They have 2 years left of team control. Taylor Ward does. Jonathan India has 2 years left, but he's also 3 years younger. Johnny, what are your thoughts on that trade? Because I know you're a Jonathan India fan.
Yeah, it's somebody that you and I have talked about a lot in a potential move. Straight up, I think that would be a great trade. I think it's a fair trade for each side. His defense at second, a little suspect. However, you could move Rengifo to third in that situation, have India play second base, and with 2 more years on his contract, maybe that pumps the brakes a little bit on how quickly they want to rush up Christian Moore to the majors. However, there is an argument to be made that you kind of want Christian Moore around Ron Washington and that crew. And with Wash's contract only being, this year and possibly next year, I think that there's a little incentive to do that. You do lose a little bit of power in that trade by getting rid of Ward and adding India. I really think the answer here, Mike, is using Taylor Ward to get some starting pitching out there rather than a bat for bat kind of deal.
At R2SO88 suggested a different trade for Ward.
Is he from Star Wars?
I'm wondering. I'm probably saying that wrong. If I am, correct us. The question was this: how would you guys feel about a Nestor Cortez and an Everson Pereira trade for Taylor Ward? What do you think, John?
Yeah, I needed to look up Everson Pereira. I was not familiar with him. He's the number 10 prospect in the Yankee system per MLB Pipeline. Lots of injuries have kind of given him a stutter start to his career, namely because of the pandemic, didn't get to play. And so he's added some power. He projects well in the outfield. And so for Everson Pereira to be part of a trade there would be really interesting. And again, it's just a matter of, you got to get this guy going. He just has had so many stop starts to his career that that's kind of what the hangup has been. The Yankees are going to need to replace Alex Verdugo in left field. And Ward is a big improvement actually over Verdugo offensively. And then, of course, Nestor Cortez and his 80-hour-long windup. Mike, I'm sure you're going to love that. Was it Blake Parker, who you couldn't stand because he took forever to...
It was Blake Parker, and then it was, who was the starting pitcher that went to the Blue Jays that I couldn't stand, and had like a good 16-win season. His name is not crossing my mind right now. I'm gonna think about it, or it might hit us when we're off the air. But go ahead.
Taking forever to wind up, basically.
Yes.
So he had the elbow injury, right? Cortez comes back and he pitches in the postseason, and he's coming out of the bullpen because he can't start. He wasn't stretched out after having the elbow injury. So I believe that he would be stretched out and ready to go in 2025. Having said that, I actually think that would be a pretty cool move if you consider that Tyler Anderson, Nestor Cortez, Kohanowitz, and Soriano, you start with those four in your rotation. I think that's a pretty good start to a starting rotation.
At AQ-2721 asked this question. It makes sense, or made the statement more. It makes sense to trade Ward now as he will be on the wrong side of 30 soon. And if it's possible to get a few minor leaguers, the upside would be to free up around $9 million in payroll for someone who could net them a pitcher or infielder via trade or free agency. Ward's homers, RBIs, and OPS improvement occurred in the second half when the season was over. That's an interesting narrative, right? So those are empty stats to me, but I'm glad he picked it up so that it would improve his trade value. It's time to move on from him. My realistic trade would be to the Orioles, who need some outfield help if Santander leaves. I think a trade for Dean Kramer and Taylor Ward would make sense. Does that make sense,
Man,
John?
if we can get a guy named Kramer on the Angels, then the Seinfeld jokes will never end. Yeah, that was great, by the way. Come on over to YouTube and see that impression. Addressing the first part, Mike, you and I totally with AQ on trading Ward for some upside minor leaguers. I think that is the way to go. Our only concern, and again, I tried to hammer this home last week.
Yeah.
Artie Moreno's narrative is that they want to be a playoff team in 2025. So we're not sure that they would trade Taylor Ward for future guys, unfortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at that. Having said that, I do like Dean Kramer. It seems like it's the walks that really hurt him. His best year was 2022 when he kept his walk rate down to about 6.6%. And then that's climbed in recent years. I think it's hard to get a good read on him. But again, I think any addition to this rotation at this point is a good one. And one thing he did well in 2024 was not get hit very hard. He had one of the best average exit velos in the league and better hard hit percentages too. So he keeps the ball in the yard. He doesn't get hit really hard. I think that's something that Dean Kramer does well. And again, any addition to this rotation outside of the three that we are kind of banking on, I think is going to be a good move for the Halos. Coming up on Locked On Angels, which players did you suggest the Angels go after through trades or free agent signings? We're going to get into all of that on today's show. Thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day, and we'll get into that conversation coming right up.
Today's episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel. They're America's #1 sportsbook, and right now, new customers can bet $5, and they can get $150 in bonus bets if they win. Now, FanDuel, their sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on all sporting, including the NFL. It's all in one place. So you get a hunch or a stirring in the middle of a game, and you're like, I wonder if I could place a bet on that. Yeah, somewhere right in here, John, where the heart is. Place a bet on that. Maybe I could check out the stats or the live play-by-play. So much more on the same page that you place your bets. You just need to visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And again, when you get started, new customers, $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It's all at FanDuel.com, so never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. And listen, we are almost to 8,000 subscribers on YouTube. I feel like since we started asking, our everydayers have risen to the occasion, Mike. Yep. So we're not that far away from 8,000 subscribers. We're really hoping to hit that mark before the end of the year. So whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube. It helps us either way if you hit that subscribe button, and it really helps our show. It helps Mike and I. We really appreciate you doing that for us.
All right, so let's talk about more of the what's on your mind Monday. We suggested some things last week about trades and players that we might pick up, and we wanted you to respond to that. So here are some names of the players that you suggested the Angels should sign or maybe trade
I like
for.
this one.
So
I like this one.
At J Harris 2428 said, a name I would like is Nick Martinez. John, tell us about Nick Martinez.
Yeah, Nick Martinez is a right-handed starter with the Reds. He just declined his option, so he is going to be a free agent. He left for Japan in 2018, Mike, and then turned his career around. Since he came back to MLB, he's been with the Padres and the Reds, and he's pitched to a 3.31 ERA. He's 20-15. He's pitched to a 1.26 ERA plus, making him 26% better than the league average pitcher. Over that time, he's had a 1.17 WHIP. He's owed $12 million in 2025, and he's a free agent after 2025. Actually, sorry, my bad. Disregard that. That was from Friday. Over the weekend, he declined, so he will be a free agent.
Yeah, a lot happened this weekend, right?
Yeah, I tried to recap. In case you missed it, it's on Instagram at Super Halo Bros and at Locked On Angels on Twitter. I tried to recap all the big things that happened. So this, you can disregard this thought that I had from Friday, because remember, I told everybody I wrote this show out, and then the Jorge Soler thing happened. So my only thing about the Reds was that they just brought in Terry Francona out of retirement to manage. So I'm like, are they going to trade one of their best arms? Well, now they're going to have to re-sign Nick Martinez if they want to get him back. They did use him as a starter and a reliever this past season. A 3.84 ERA as a starter in 89 innings, and then a 1.86 ERA as a reliever in 53 1/3 innings. I think that Nick Martinez can be that this year's Seth Lugo. He's a guy who got used as a reliever, has the ability to start. He finished 2024 with 11 straight starts and he went 5-2 with a 2.42 ERA. So if he's available, I know he's older, but I think he's a really reliable arm that the Angels could utilize in the starting rotation as you continue to workshop some of the guys that are coming up through the minor league system. I think that would be a really smart move.
Another one from YouTube. Is it Gades 2832? Am I saying that right?
You know what? Either that or Gades.
That's even better. I like that better. So how about Ryan Feltner of the Rockies? Solid stuff. Improved a bit last year. Only 28. Maybe he'd benefit from the Carlos Estevez treatment by escaping Colorado and slotting into our rotation. John, I really like this. Do you like this?
This is how I know Gades is an everydayer, because we always talk about getting Carlos Estevez out of Colorado and making him better. This is a great outside the box pick from Gades or Gades. Feltner grades really well, Mike, on his slider, his curveball, and his changeup. Fangraphs has a stat called Stuff Plus. So buckle up, nerds. I'm going to teach you what that is in case you're unaware. I'm sure a lot of our everydayers already know. But Stuff Plus is a grading system where hundreds league average, just like, OPS plus, WRC plus. It looks at the physical characteristics of a pitch. So like even the release point, the velocity, the vertical and the horizontal movement, and the spin rate. So it's basically, what does a pitcher control? Like, how good is their stuff? That's why it's called Stuff Plus. And so I went through the numbers here. His four-seam fastball is 81. Not good. His sinker is 93. Not great, but below league average. Now, here's the kicker. The slider has a Stuff Plus number of 117. The curveball is 108. And the changeup is 117. So basically, Feltner can really control the ball well. He can spin the ball well. And that's in spite of the altitude at Coors Field. In fact, there's some good numbers about him being away from Coors Field. Mike, why don't you share those with us?
Yeah, these numbers are interesting, John. So it's a 5.10 ERA at Coors, but a 3.93 away from Coors Field. That was his ERA away. Had a 2.94 average against at Coors, a 2.34 average against away from Coors Field.
Mhm.
So great move, Johnny. I really like this. And if it's a trade that they need to make and it's Taylor Ward might hit 52 home runs at Coors Field, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Mike, the next question is rather interesting. In fact, I actually got some insight from JD, who hosts Locked On Cardinals. Why don't you share that question with us?
Yeah, at Dylan Summers 5347 suggested a Detmers trade, re-Detmers for Nolan Gorman. What do you think?
Sorry. Again, background, clearing my throat, the Frischkers. He's not wrong. I think they're very similar situations. Change of scenery, guys. Gorman can play second and third. Hasn't really put it together in the majors yet. But the Cardinals have a lot of options aside from Gorman to play those spots. But the overall consensus from Cardinals fans is that they would want to keep Gorman around, especially as they're trying to figure things out. So I reached out to JD from Locked On Cardinals, and here's what he had to say. I said, hey, what about Detmers for Gorman? Straight up, seems like they need change of scenery. What do you think? He said, the issue is the Cardinals are slashing payroll. So if they move Arenado, they will probably use Gorman at third base. They're supposed, he says, suppose they could put Thomas Sagassi down there too, but that would be one reason they don't do it. Second reason is that they have PTSD from trading prospects too early. Yeah, think about Adolis Garcia and what he's done with Texas.
Yeah.
Gorman has elite power, so I'd be shocked at moving on from him already at age 24 when he just popped 19 home runs and less than 400 at bats. Third, their offense was the real problem last year and not the pitching. They still got Miles Michaelis, Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Steven Matz in the rotation with multiple younger, cheaper guys to fill the last spots or do a spot start if one is traded. Now, if the Angels would like a veteran guy for Detmers, I could see that more than trading away Gorman at this time. So now JD's opening up the conversation of, hey, do we want Nolan Arenado? Is that somebody we want at third base? I'd take him. Let's go.
Last one here, John, just a suggestion of players to be picked up. Max Fried, Willie Adames, and Druxton Profar. Thoughts on those three players?
I feel like the Angels aren't going to play in the Max Fried sandbox in the offseason. Could be wrong. I would love to be wrong. I just don't think that they'll go there. Profar is interesting. The only issue I have is that he's coming off a career year, and that's with this Padre team who was fantastic. Profar was not supposed to do any of what he did this season.
It almost feels like who'd we sign before Torrey Hunter? And I'm blanking on his name. He was from Texas, the Texas Rangers.
Gary Matthews Jr.
Thank you. Gosh, blanking on. Yeah, that's all of the allergies.
Another first curse.
It feels like a Gary Matthews Jr. situation, right? He went nuts this last year, and then the Angels sign him, and then he doesn't go nuts ever again, right?
Yeah. The one guy I do like in this suggestion is Willie Adames. So he did mention 6 years, $152.2 million is Spot Track's market value. So that comes out to about $25.5 million per year. He would certainly be the corner infielder who could provide some power. He averages about 28 home runs a year. He had a career high with 32 in 2024. Not a great defensive shortstop this last year, but he has been better in the past. Maybe a move to third base was always going to happen. Maybe even move to second and Rengifo goes to third. Last time he did play second was with the Rays in 2018. So he certainly adds a threat to this lineup. I had him in fantasy as kind of a late round pickup this year. And boy, I reap the benefits of having him. And so it also depends on how things shake out between Rengifo and Christian Moore. Rengifo, we think, is the perfect extension candidate given his age, and he's just now hitting his stride. Christian Moore, again, it depends on how quickly they want to move him up. So if they bring on Adames, it gives Rengifo a chance to play whatever position Adames isn't going to play. And then they can, again, pump the brakes on Christian Moore if they decide to do that.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Now that baseball's over, what are you going to do with yourself? Well, Game Time's here to help you out because they still have tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, so much more. Just had some friends that went to see Nate Bargatze. They got their tickets from Game Time and got great seats, even got good deals on those tickets. And that's what Game Time is all about. They want to save you money. They have exclusive in-app flash deals on select seats ahead of the game or whatever event you're going to. They have zone deals where you choose the section, Game Time chooses the seats. All in pricing. Just toggle this feature on. You'll see all that you owe at the very end. No surprise fees at checkout. And you get a panoramic view of where your seat is at on the app before you purchase. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. And with every purchase, you get Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So no longer do you need to guess if you're going to get good tickets or not. Just use our friends at Game Time, just like my friends did. They downloaded the app, John. They used our promo code LOCKEDONMLB. They got $20 off their first purchase. $20 off their first purchase. You're welcome, friends. All you have to do is use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. What time is it? Game time.
Mike, some scattered thoughts here at the end from questions that came last week and also over the weekend. And JE9237 on YouTube said, is it possible to trade Taylor? We keep talking about it. Is it it's right in front of my face. What am I doing? Good grief. Is it possible to trade Mike Trout and eat part of the contract? Also, what about buying out Rendon? Mike, why don't you start with that Mike Trout portion of the conversation?
Yeah, my dyslexia is impacting you across the screen.
Seriously.
That's funny. See, here's the reality for Mike Trout. It's only possible if he agrees to it. He has a no trade clause. He can veto any and all trades. And the Angels were going to definitely have to eat a big part of his contract because they still owe him a whole lot. But remember the beginning of 2024, he hits 10 home runs, and then the discourse quickly turned into, when are the Angels going to trade him? Or when is he going to ask for a trade?
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that Trout is in this thing for the long haul. I think he first wants to perform on the field before he does anything else, because if they trade him away, there's going to be this giant hole in his career in Anaheim. And I don't know if that is going to sit on his heart. According to what we heard from Mike Trout, he doesn't want to leave a hole. He wants to do something spectacular here in Anaheim.
I'm glad you brought that part up because, yeah, he goes off. You know, the average wasn't great, but he was hitting 10 home runs before the end of the month,
right?
The first month of the year. And everyone's like, oh, when's he going to ask for a trade? When's he going to move? When's he going to? And I'm like, yeah. So then the Angels aren't going to eat any of his salary. So I think that's the big caveat here is the minute he starts going off, they're not eating a penny of that salary. And then the minute he gets hurt again, it's, oh, well, the Angels are going to have to pay half that down. So it's just like everything with Mike Trout. The discourse around him is so fickle. It's just like, all right, let's just let the guy play and stay here. He's already answered where he wants to be, what he wants to do. And so this is not a JE who asked the question, by the way. It's the media discourse out there. It's always so fickle when it comes to Mike Trout, right?
You can always tell who's paying attention to the Angels really closely, like our everydayers, and who isn't. Even the people who were frustrated with the Soler trade were like, this is why they needed somebody like this, because they have to plan for Trout's injuries, right? Yeah. Speaking of injuries, John, talk about that Rendon comment and buying out his contract or potentially doing that this season.
So I did the best I could looking into this online. And so say, for example, Rendon decides to retire. Well, baseball contracts are always guaranteed money, right, Mike? They're always guaranteed contracts.
Yep.
And then the guaranteed money is how the luxury tax is configured as well. So if you're guaranteed $30 million per year, then $30 million is going to count toward the luxury tax. And that's the thing about the Angels. They're always concerned about the luxury tax and not hitting it. Retiring early, it doesn't automatically remove the guaranteed salary from the team's payroll for the luxury tax purposes. So let's say Rendon does retire and the Angels negotiate his contract, something that he'd have to agree to, then whatever the renegotiated salary is based upon what they agree to would also impact the luxury tax. So they might say, hey man, if you retire, we're giving you $10 million in 25 and $10 million in 26, since that's how long your contract runs for. And then if Tony 2 Weeks agreed to that, the luxury tax would still be impacted. It would be $10 million toward the luxury tax each of those years. So it really comes down to, could they even convince him to do it? Number one. Number two, what kind of renegotiated contract would the Angels and Rendon agree to? And number 3, he can just sit on the bench and collect his $36 million the next 2 years, which counts toward the luxury tax, unfortunately. And so, yeah, that's the issue there.
John, let's hit these last 2 real quick. At Swimboy3 says, I've been screaming about starting pitcher John Means. He's got a upside. He's undervalued, low price tag. So John Means, what do you think, John?
Yeah, you know what? He's going to be out until late 2025, unfortunately. The only thing I could think of is maybe the Angels do sign him and kind of pull a Brandon Woodruff with the Brewers. Like, hey, we know you're injured, but we'd like to have you back. The only thing that's like that's a big risk in and of itself. I think a better risk to take, Mike, is giving somebody like George Clausen or Sam Aldeguerri a chance to pitch rather than taking on a risk like that.
Yeah. And then last one, I like the Soler trade from 11 Les Dune, I believe is how it's pronounced. I like the Soler trade considering that we had a DH. We need a DH. A pitcher intrigues me as well. They're thinking maybe Jameson Taillon. What do you think?
Yeah, he's somebody that I think you wanted to sign in your GM episode. He's pitched really well for Chicago even this past year. Signed through 2026. He's getting $18 million in 25 and 26. 2 years of a cheaper Ward for 2 years of Taillon. Well, the problem is they got a full outfield, so I don't think Ward is the solution. They might go a different route, Mike. They actually need some bullpen help. They need a closer for the Cubs. They ranked near the top of blown saves this season, and so they will probably play in the free agent pool when it comes to closing pitchers. But the Angels have bullpen depth, even down into the minor leagues that they could trade from. So perhaps if they wanted somebody like Jameson Taillon, they could use that bullpen depth in some form or fashion to help the Cubs in that regard, because the consensus I saw from Cubs fans and researching was they're not confident that Taillon could repeat what he did, and that they have more pressing needs. But they've got an outfield of Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, Cody Bellinger, and Pete Crow Armstrong. So I think that's why I was like, well, Ward probably wouldn't fit in Chicago, but maybe they could use some bullpen help, and the Angels definitely have that.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. Our friend Sully is going to get you through the offseason for all of baseball, and you can listen to his show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.
Hey, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to today's show. Get in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. Mike, it's my favorite time of the year. What are we starting this week?
Yeah, it's GM week, John. So first things first, tomorrow on Locked On Angels, we're going to look back at what we selected, what we did this last offseason, and find out if we're going to get a contract extension or get fired, right? We're going to talk about the people that we were going to sign and people we selected, all of that good stuff. We're going to share all of that, and you can make fun of us or celebrate with us tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Oh no. I think my big surprise was saying I'm signing Shohei. So we're going to have here come the comments, everybody. So step up, man up, put on your armor. Here we go. All right, friends. Yeah. We hope to see you back for that conversation. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday.
The other pitcher that took forever was Matt Shoemaker. That was the guy that was thinking. He took forever to throw the pitch. Come on, throw it.